was that there were two map modes with that name, and so I wonder if maybe that was a problem. There's only supposed to be one.
Oh, did I? Sorry. I
Yeah.
misunderstood it. Which map exactly?
It was the upper velocity map mode. There are two of them. There are two map modes with the same name. That was my
I
point.
see. No, I thought you were asking why there is a mapper in the bottom.
No, I mean that
Yeah,
was interesting. I also wanted to know that, but I was just trying to report what I thought was a bug.
yeah, there's definitely a shadow. 1 second, I'm gonna fix this right now before I forget. Upper velocity, you said.
Yeah. There are two upper velocity map modes. Actually, I've started the stream, so you can see on the stream now on the right side of the screen.
Um, yeah, yeah, there are two. Huh. It's under bottom temperature. Okay. Okay, so the first upper velocity is actually upper density. I just misnamed it in the UI.
Ah, okay, yeah. I figured that was what happened because there were two map modes for the bottom layer and they had different names. So I assumed there was just some small mistake in the name.
Yeah, basically what happened. Wait, upper density is there. Is it the all map mode section or the climate section? It's all
Uh,
map mode
it's
section.
it's all map modes. Yeah.
Oh, it's just duplicated. Okay, I'm gonna remove. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I mean that's why I'm here. I'm here to test things.
Yeah, this thing slipped through under my radar.
Yep. Okay. Well, my internet connection seems to be better than last time, but we'll see whether that holds. Anyway, well, normally what I do when I start the stream is just kind of wait around for a little while wait for people to show up. And I guess we still have a few minutes to wait there. But I guess I can say to the viewers now, we have Bri Science Guy. Hello. What I'm looking at right now is the one of the wind map modes, the bottom wind map mode to be exact. And one of the new things that has been worked on since I last streamed is that we now have winds and they move around. It's an early iteration though, so once the winds dissipate, they don't come back. We need new wind to be generated. But I'm going to start with this because it goes away pretty quickly at the beginning of the simulation, and so it's the first thing I need to show. But I don't want to start it, of course, until we actually begin the stream with all the people here. I can, though, show this biome map mode. And you can see that we don't have these continent-spanning forests anymore. Like this area, for example, used to be just one giant forest, and now it is mostly savanna temperate. There's grassland temperate. Down here is savanna tropical. And only up here in the north do we have forest temperate broadleaf, forest temperate mix, and so on. And so the biomes are much more varied. Down here is a big savanna, and also, they're a lot more stable too. So if you just leave the simulation running for a long time, the whole world won't turn into a forest. The biomes will reach their equilibrium, and then they'll just stay there. Oh, and one thing I also noticed, Calandial, is that the the societies no longer spawn in particular biomes. Before, for example, here you can see there's this Mediterranean area, and there used to be lots of human human settlements that would spawn right here. But now they're scattered all over. Is that
Yeah, people asked me about it on the last stream you had. Someone suggested that we axe it and have people spawn all over because it would be more interesting. And I thought it'd be worth, trying out. Because they did look a bit too clumped up, I have to admit that.
Well, also, I think probably spawning them all together clumped doesn't really matter because as the simulation runs, they'll just migrate away from each other anyway.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter now, but it did matter when I changed it.
Oh, well, okay. Fair enough. Alrighty, so let me see here. I'll check the chat. Oh yeah, Bri Science Guy asks, what colors are the fastest wind speeds? So I guess you'll have to explain what you explained to me again.
Right, could you show the map of again
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
have it on the screen?
yeah. I was just trying to find it again.
Choose the velocity, not the direction, please. Because there are two. There is one which shows directions, and there is one which shows velocity.
Okay, bottom velocity.
So bottom velocity. On bottom velocity, you can probably see colors from the entire color spectrum, but some of them become white. And the whiter they are, the less saturated they are, the solid they are. So if you see a very saturated color green and blue, their magnitude is the same, they only differ in direction.
Okay. I mean, if you plan to include some kind of wind map mode in the finished game, probably you'll need to change the UI. You know, maybe with arrows showing the direction of the wind or something like that.
I was thinking we could maybe do something like they did in Earth No School. I don't know if you know that application. They have particles on the globe and they move on the globe in the direction of the winds. But I haven't done that yet. I was trying to balance the simulation instead.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Well, the problem is that having particles moving around is that there are so many winds moving in pretty much every direction that I think that would become very confusing. Probably just arrows would be simpler, I imagine.
Maybe. That's
Oh, and
definitely something like that.
I wanted to ask too, what are there are several new map modes involving the word Holdridge. I assume that's the name of a person. Um, what are Holdridge life zones? I'm looking at it now. What does this mean? What are these colors?
Um, it's a bioclassification that is calculated from metrics more realistic than Köppen climates. It takes into account total precipitation and so-called evapotranspiration ratio, which is basically it measures how quickly water evaporates from a tile. And I don't have a legend for it. It uses the same colors as the ones on Wikipedia, but I use it to guide my research in how accurate the climate model, the vegetation model is. That's one of the reasons why the new vegetation model is better. I had better data visualization to tell me what's wrong.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I noticed that the biomes and the Holdridge life zones sort of roughly overlap. I mean, I can see that this yellower area is drier and this greener area is wetter.
Yeah, they overlap because I used it to guide my equations, so
Yeah.
they sort of have to overlap.
Oh, it makes sense. Although I want to note also, this alpine biome is way too broad. You can see over here, for example, we have almost 100. We have 100% bare ground, and it's alpine. But over here, there is very little bare ground, and it's alpine. So that they're in the same category, but I think these two areas, if you were to look at them with your eyeballs, would be very different. So I think probably the classification there, the colors need to be changed somehow.
Yeah, I may have to add more biomes in the upper altitudes. Maybe like a alpine forest or something.
Hmm. Yeah, and also, if this tile and this tile, for example, aren't all that different from each other, but they're just on the border. So one of them is colored green, the other one's colored yellow, and that suggests, because they're different colors, I think that suggests to people that they're more different than they are. I'm not sure what to do about that. Maybe there could be, I don't know, some kind of smoother transition between the tile colors.
Yeah, that's a flaw of having a classification system. There will always be some ambiguities. I don't think it's a big issue because it also happens with Koppen map nodes. That's one of the issues. That's one of the reasons why Koppen map nodes are so difficult to work with if you're trying to make a simulation.
Right, right. Which is the issue is that, for example, right here is the border of this forest tropical broadleaf dry area, and it doesn't have as much forest as this sort of interior area, even though they're the same biome. And so, at least on this map mode, there's not an indication that there's a lot more tree cover in this area than in this area right on the border. You just have to intuit that by looking at it.
Yeah, there is a separate tree map mode which you could use to get that information in particular.
Oh
Um,
yes.
we could we could smooth colors, but I'm worried that would make them less readable. And not every color transition will look nice, and it would put some constraints on what colors we can use for map modes, because we'd have to avoid a situation where transition from color A to color B produces some color C that is also used by the classification. That makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, maybe you could do something like what Europa Universalis does with striped lines, where if a blue tag occupies land belonging to a black tag, it'll have a black province with blue lines over it.
That's possible. I haven't thought of that. Huh. Well, I'll put it on the to-do list, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's just something to think about. I don't know. Again, like you said, it's not that big of a problem. It's just, I'm reporting what I noticed. Oh, hey, Jang is here.
Yep.
Ah, very good. Hello.
I would have said something, but I don't see anything, and climate and like wind is not my expertise.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
I sent you a link if you want to watch Solitarian zooming over the globe.
Okay, I'll look at it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start looking at the climate and winds and stuff because the winds are only simulated right at the beginning, and then later we can look at the settlements and the people and stuff, and you can talk about your economic work that you've done.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, our discussions.
all I want to say is just is that Kella and I have just been looking at different models. So I might just like recap at what we've been looking at. And I think next time we're gonna look at because Kella really likes the what model was it? It was the game Solaris.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe next time you can talk to I'll study it, but I think maybe you know more about the Stellaris model, so you might want to.
It's very simple. Yeah, it's very simple, so it should take not that much time. I can do that.
Okay, but anyway, back to wind for now.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, I normally wait for people to show up. We've been doing this for about 15 minutes now. I think that's plenty of time. So this is actually the first time I'm seeing the wind as well. I have it on speed 3. Maybe that's too fast. I don't know. Let's go. Oh, I see. It's
it updates once an hour, so
once an hour.
speed
Okay.
3 maybe a bit too slow.
All right. So we'll
Maybe
go
like
speed.
speed 5 or speed 6.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Speed 8's probably good. Interesting. Oh yeah.
Is this working? Because I have a stream delay.
Yeah. You can see it. That's pretty cool.
Okay, so the reason why you see this striping pattern is because the winds are rotating due to the Coriolis effect. If you have a wind pattern on a planet and you don't give additional pressure gradients, the winds will eventually converge on a pattern wherein they flow in circles. They are called inertial circles, and that's kind of what's going on right now on this map. Although your world converged on it much more quickly than my test world, so that's a bit disappointing.
Oh well, I don't know. But I can see though that the over the ocean where it's all flat, the winds can move more quickly. But here, the winds are more disturbed as they go across the mountains and the land.
Yeah. You can also show the vorticity map mode, although I'm not sure if it's gonna look nice on this world.
Vorticity is just blank. I think it's all gone away by now.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Well, that's that then. That's how I begin the stream. Let's see. So I've already shown the biomes again, and I already shown Krippen. There's something also I noticed that there is. Oh gosh, is it? No, it's an ecology. Ecology, local animals. I believe you added another one. You added the red jungle fowl, and I think reindeer too.
Yeah, I needed some more animals for people to not die as much.
Yes, right. Did you add more plants too, or are those the same as last time?
I don't remember. It's been a while. Maybe.
I didn't see
I
anything.
certainly, I certainly rebalanced them, but there is so many of them that it's difficult to tell if I added any new ones. So
Yeah, I don't.
I sadly don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I think I added peach and berries, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Well, I just thought that maybe if you added plants, if you added animals, you also might have added plants. But I also can't remember. I don't know. Oh, I'm just noticing this glacier has local plants and animals. That's that's not good. Probably that should be removed.
Yeah, so I don't know how to handle this because this is the plant that you can gather there if there is plants on the tile. But there are no plants on the tile, so you can't gather from it. So should we show this information or should we just hide it? I'm not sure.
Well, could you hide it just for that one particular biome of glacier?
Glacier? Potentially, yeah, I could.
Then
But then
probably.
you wouldn't know. But then you won't know what plants will grow there once it melts. So
Oh,
there's always a
well,
trade.
yeah, that's true. But of course, at the moment, glaciers can't melt.
True, true. Yeah, I guess I should hide it then.
Yeah, and so and then once glaciers, can go away once they're more dynamic, then you could
Mhm,
add it back.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, very good. So anyway, also a big feature of this update is that let me get a good overview here. Dear viewers, look at our little societies here. They're scooting around. Yeah, you see, there we go. Their borders are growing and shrinking as they move around and they get food, and you can look at what they're eating here. This is edible food availability. So the blue area is areas that are untouched by the hunter gatherers, and these red and orange areas are areas where they've gone, they've eaten the food, and now there's less. You can see up here in this very cold area, this glacial area. There is a lot less food available, and so the hunter gatherers eat it more quickly. And I think it takes longer to regenerate too. I assume in the colder area. And then as we,
Uh,
yeah,
if I may interject, the regeneration rate depends on the amount of plants and biomass in the area.
okay, so that would be this primary production map mode segue. You can see that
Yeah.
this is the basically primary production is how much life there is in the tile, pretty much. And then there's a difference between primary production and edible primary production. Because, of course, there can be a lot of plants, but just because they're there doesn't mean you can eat them. So, yeah, up here in this northern area, there's less primary production available for these poor people to get their nom on.
Yeah, in
Oh,
particular, primary production is very high in the equatorial regions. But if you check edible primary production, it's much lower because a lot of that production is in leaves and other things that people don't really eat. That's why tribes in equatorial areas tend to be more nomadic than ones in temperate climates and on coasts of flat rivers.
oh, that makes sense. Well, also, there is this tribal migration map mode where you can see little lines that show the future path of the migration. So this society here, this settlement, will scoot along this line, and its destination is right here. And then if we let the simulation go, you can see that according to the hours of the day, this settlement will move. So during waking hours, the people will move around, and then at night they sleep. And then it reaches its destination after a few days of traveling. And then they sit there, and the borders grow, which means that they are stationary for a while, collecting all the food in that big area. And then eventually, they will exhaust the food, and then they'll scoot along to the next area. I
Yeah,
noticed.
one of the reasons why I wanted to simulate ours is sort of so we could have ambushes simulated by the game instead of having them happen through random events. So like you can kind of see it what it could look like in the future because you can see people falling asleep and not moving as they are moving to some location. So there are openings to attack them in those hours, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I do think that having hours is better, even if it does make the simulation a bit slower. It allows for this kind of granularity, which is much, much better. Alrighty. Well, let's see. What else is on my list of things to talk about? Oh, yeah. So I wanted to show all of the new map modes. So we also have a starvation map mode because, the people sometimes don't get enough to eat. And if they don't, then they'll be starving. So over here, for example, this area is not quite as green as the others. If we were to click on one of the people, still placeholder character models, you can see that,
This may be difficult to show.
well, yeah, I guess what I have to do is show the stats for someone who is less well fed and then show stats for someone who is more well fed. You can see the difference.
Because like when they die, they are not shown in the UI.
Right, yeah, but I guess you can see what they look like just before they die.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, you can see how the stats here go up and down as the character goes through life every day, eats a little bit. Oh, also I noticed this water value is way too high, 270,000%. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that. It
hmm.
doesn't impact anything. I checked for that, but I'm not sure why it's so high.
Yeah, that is strange. Although I probably won't be able to find anybody who's really starving until the simulation goes for a little while longer. We've only been doing it for a few months now.
I think you need to check a hemisphere where it's winter, and then find a tribe that relies mostly on hunting. Because spoiler alert, we have spoilage now, there is no way to preserve food. So when they rely on hunting in winter, they kind of run out of stockpiles.
Ah, okay. Well, winter is down here in the southern hemisphere right now because we're in July. But well, okay, yeah. We'll look at the starvation map mode. These are winter tribes, and I have to re-click. Now these guys right here aren't moving. They're not migrating. Is that correct?
It depends on how much they're eating. Because they only migrate when they run out of edible food in the area. So if they don't run out of food, they don't need to migrate.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Look at edible food. Apparently, they still have plenty.
Yeah, I bet that if you look at primary production, the edible portion, there will be more of it here than in some other areas.
Yeah, it's kind of greener. Yep, that makes sense. And the greenest areas, of course, are the most productive.
Yeah, it's not as easy to check because it kind of also depends on the population density. Like, if you have more people to feed, you're gonna have to migrate, even if you live in a relatively prosperous area.
Yes. Oh, yes. And speaking of population, I noticed that people can starve to death. Can they also be born? Can the population increase? I didn't quite pay attention to that.
I thought they can, but now I'm not sure because after you told me about the bugs you found yesterday, I dug deeper into it, and now I'm not sure if it's working.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that in order to simulate that, you would have to let the simulation go for quite a long time, and I didn't do that.
Yeah, I'll be figuring this out today and tomorrow, so I'll have an answer in a few hours.
Ah, okay, very good. Also, I noticed that right here the borders are kind of strange. There's this settlement inside the borders of this other settlement. I mean, it's not really a problem because in a short while they'll migrate away from each other anyway, but it does kind of look weird.
Yeah, that's a problem with how they migrate. I need to think how to fix it.
Mhm.
Basically, the settlement on the right settled first, while the left one was migrating, and it kind of saw all the terrain, but they can't go to war right now. So the other settlement can't really do anything about it. and that's why the borders are botched.
Ah, okay. Well, then, yeah, I guess what you could do is just have them able to fight each other. And so if this settlement doesn't have access to this other area, it'll, I don't know, engage in some kind of
Yeah,
interaction.
ideally, the settlement that is enclosed should just request that terrain, and that will happen, but it doesn't happen yet.
Well, also, I mean, I'm just trying to think of this practically. If these are hunter gatherers, I mean, all this area is not filled with people. So de facto, these guys here could just walk through this area and probably never be discovered.
Yeah, yeah, they could. Um, it's a bit tricky because the way I made migrations work for settlements is that they can't right now move into tiles with uh, can't move into tiles that are controlled by other settlements. I justify it by observing that there is a certain radius in which hunter gatherers visit their site relatively frequently. So if they were to pass through that terrain, they would run into each other. And that radius happens to be uh, the amount of in-game hours that would take a hunter-gatherer to walk through in a single day, which is what controls the size of borders.
Ah,
If that makes sense.
yes. So we could actually look at the day's travel map mode then.
Yeah, and if you click on the tile,
Yeah, yeah, 5 days travel.
that also answers the question in the chat. They have larger borders because they are on easier terrain.
Oh yeah, I didn't even look at the chat. Oh, I'm a bad streamer. Let's see. Bright Science Guy asks, "Are new tribes formed and created yet?" No, I can answer that one. That's not the case. It seems now there are more than at the start. I think that's just because they've just moved around in such a manner that
Yeah,
they appear to be more
it's an
plentiful.
optical illusion because they move now.
So what was that, Jing?
That's an optical illusion because they move now, so you optically think there are more of them.
Oh yeah, okay. Alrighty. And let's see here. I'm sorry, I'm looking through my list of things to talk about. Oh, yes. So I want to go into the 3D view so that we can show the increased render distance. Although I want to go into an area with fewer trees because you can't really see very far if there are trees blocking your sight. So we'll go into this savanna temperate area and wait for it to load. And probably we're going to be in nighttime. No, we're not in nighttime. That's fantastic. Okay, so here's our temperate savanna. Seems a lot more forested than I thought. But you can see that the render distance is a bit higher than it was last time. So that's cool.
Also, I haven't mentioned it anywhere, but now if you fly arbitrarily high, the terrain won't despawn, so
Ooh.
you can watch your terrain from high altitude. So, because previously it would disappear after like 100 meters, and now I think you can fly up to 2 kilometers before it
Well,
disappears.
that's pretty cool. You know, now what I want to do, now that you've told me that, I want to look at a mountain from way, way up high. So let's go to some high mountain. Then notice there's a snowy area over here. Yeah, yeah, okay. So look at the snowy mountain from way up high. Oh, yeah.
I think it won't be enough to show you massive mountains because that's still like 2% of a tile.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Well, still, it's better than before.
Tiles are humongous.
Oh yeah, and we can look down and see the little trees, and we go down below the tree line. Yeah, but I mean, you can just imagine this though, but over the entire screen.
Yeah, that is the goal. I so I only extended range of the current implementation of terrain. I haven't changed it, and the goal will be to have a second lower resolution terrain that can render arbitrarily far. If you've played Daggerfall Unity, that's how terrain works in that game.
Okay, so there are two renderers then.
Yeah, but we only have the close terrain one because it's the one that is more useful.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess you're going to have some kind of level of detail going on where the distant stuff will be blurrier or something.
It will have fewer triangles, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see here. We've got render distance. Okay, what are the other map modes that I have not shown? We have migrations, food availability. Oh yeah, you can see that food availability now has made this sort of polka dot. I do find if I let the simulation run for a few years and then look at the food availability map mode, the whole world looks pretty funny. It's all speckled with different colors. All right, ground temperature doesn't seem to do anything right now. And then these the wind map modes, which don't really. Oh, hey, bottom temperature does something.
That's all right.
Well, I was just looking at these temperature map modes for the atmosphere. The upper temperature map mode has nothing, but the bottom temperature map mode does, but only here in the south.
Yeah, if you unpause this, you'll see the yearly cycle and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's not finished. It's like 5% done, the entire model. So if you actually check the temperature, you'd see that the northern hemisphere has 80 degrees Celsius, which is not good.
let me see here. Climate.
You won't see it in the UI. You'd have to press the button under escape to bring up the debug view, and then click on a tile to see it.
Oh, I see. All right.
It's called bottom Boltzmann lattice temperature or something like that.
Oh, goodness. Let's see here. Oh, there's bottom Boltzmann lattice temperature, 56 Celsius. Yeah, that's pretty warm.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
78.
it's not. And then you have upper Boltzmann temperature of absolute zero. So
Oh, yes, you're right.
I guess it could be worse.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well, it's like in Dwarf Fortress, absolute zero. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Alrighty, so those are the wind direction map modes, and then we have the density map mode. I assume this is pretty self-explanatory that the darker areas have more air. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that means exactly what you think it does.
good, good. There's the velocity. Oh yeah, as you can see, we've let simulation run for a long time, so it's dissipated quite a lot. Okay, edible primary production. I already showed that one. Primary production, life zones. This is a corollary to the Köppen climate map mode. It's a sort of a similar function, showing the different areas of the world and these sorts of biomes and plants you might find there. Um, okay, so rainfall category. Can you explain this one? I mean, I assume it's pretty self-explanatory, right? These green areas have more rain, yellow areas have less rain.
Yeah, exactly. So rainfall category and aridity province are the two map modes from which the Holdridge map mode is composed. If you look at both of them, you'll see that the Holdridge life zones are kind of a cross section of the two.
Okay. Life zones. Oh yeah, I see it now. Okay, that makes sense. Oops.
So if you've done any world building and you check biome classifications, you may find a little triangle that tells you how to calculate Holdridge life zones based on things like evapotranspiration, which are really difficult to calculate from fantasy worlds. But now Salt does it for you, so there's that.
Yes. Speaking of evapotranspiration, I noticed that here in the summary, we see that there is potential evapotranspiration, effective temperature. Um, do these numbers mean something right now, or are they just placeholders?
Yeah, they mean exactly what they say they mean. I'm not sure if I'd be keeping them here because I assume most people don't really care about these things.
Well, I don't know. The thing is, what impact would evapotranspiration have for me just playing the game? Like, would I care about that number?
It changes how agriculture and how plants grow. But you could also look at Holdridge life zones instead and have almost all the information with none of the difficulty of analyzing it when it has the correct color scheme.
Yeah, and actually, now that I think about it, probably, if I'm some Bronze Age farmer, I'm not going to have any idea what the evapotranspiration
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's something that could be just in the debug menu or just for observer mode or something like that.
Mhm.
And I noticed that this glacier has evapotranspiration. Probably not correct.
It is correct. It should have an inspiration.
But I thought that only came from trees.
No, it's a measure of the amount of exchange between atmosphere about a unit of surface and the surface itself. Trees influence it because they're kind of included in the balance for that surface.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So I could imagine trees as extensions of the ground, so they sort of increase the surface area by an awful lot.
Yeah, so the game calculates if you go to the flora and fauna section and you see the ground cover, the game has different weights to areas covered by trees, conifers, shrubs, and grass, and those are then used to weight the final potential evapotranspiration figure.
Hmm. Okay. And then, so this primary production number here, it's just a number, but what exactly does that number mean? Obviously, a higher number means more production, but like, are there units for this primary production? What exactly does that indicate?
Grams per meter square per year. I should add that unit in the UI. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, that would be helpful because at the moment there's just a number here and it doesn't really tell me all that much other than big number good, low number bad.
Yeah, no, it's a physical unit. It's grams per meter square per year.
Okay, gotcha. Whoops, I need to check chat. I forgot again. Okay, Bright Science Guy says there is a compass now. Well, there was a compass last time, Bright Science Guy, if you look at my last stream. All right, so that is that. Let's see here. I showed migration. I guess I should let the simulation go for a little while and we can show starvation because probably somebody somewhere is going to start starving. In fact, I
Yeah,
should have.
the game doesn't delete settlements that have no people in them, so you could probably find one with no people to show that people died.
Yes, I actually noticed that. And I noticed that in the starvation map mode, the settlement turns purple when everybody's dead.
Yeah, purple means that starvation is through the roof, basically. It can happen in the future. In the future, it could happen in a famine in a highly populated area. But since populations are so low, it only happens here when everyone dies, basically.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I noticed that with starvation, pretty much it was either green, yellow, or purple. Oh,
Yeah.
and also, this says starvation rolling average. What exactly does rolling mean in this context?
Do you know what a moving average is?
No.
Um, so, um, when you want to express some figure over time, for example, rainfall, you get data points for every, for example, hour. But sometimes you only care about the greater picture. So you average, I don't know, last 20 hours together, and you say that it was the value for that specific hour. And a rolling average is kind of like that. But instead of averaging over some time period, you keep the previous value, and then you add to it your latest value by doing a linear combination of the two with a very small factor for the new value, if that makes sense.
So basically, a rolling average means you have the current number and you also have the previous number, and then you kind of like put them together and compare them.
I take 99% of the last number and add 1% of the current number, and then I use that as the new number, and that's what I draw here. You can think of it as showing the historical values, sort of. Like if there is a huge spike in starvation, this value will increase. it won't increase. It won't increase very drastically, and it won't decrease to zero the moment the starvation stops. So like it will have some memory of what happened before the current hour. So like if someone dies of starvation, the value will increase and it will stay larger than zero for a couple months.
I see. Okay, yeah.
I'm doing I'm doing it this way because people who migrate around in the future, they should know about things like the risk of a famine in an area. So like if a huge famine happens in your city, this will increase the rolling average of starvation. It will make people think that if they move to your city, they will be at risk of starving and other things like that.
Okay, but then I suppose that would have to be represented to the player as something like rumors of low food availability or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure it was the best UX for it. Maybe just calling it starvation and removing the rolling average would be better. So like people wouldn't get confused by what rolling average means.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think just having starvation may be better.
Well, yeah, exactly. So when I saw the mathematical term rolling average, I thought, okay, but we're in a video game here, so exactly how does that term translate into what I'm seeing on the screen? And so I think probably you could have the rolling average in the background, but then what you present to the player is some kind of, like in Dwarf Fortress, some little sentence, a description. The people here tend to be well fed, or something like that.
Yeah. To answer the question in the chat, do the tribes create new buildings every time they move around? No, they pack up the buildings and move with the buildings.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we can click on a settlement here and see the buildings. They're just thatched huts right now. We click on a building, we can see its inventory is some food. But I clicked on these settlements because these are some of the guys that are not migrating, but we can see that these guys are kind of yellowish, and so this means that they're experiencing some kind of starvation, but they're not moving.
Yeah, so I talked about it on the Discord server, I think. There is a problem with the current model where I need to change the way hunting works. Because right now there is a slight chance for people to fail a hunt like 60 times in a row and then starve. Even though the area has plenty of food, if that makes sense. Which doesn't really happen in real life because the model of randomness I currently use for hunting is just white noise, which isn't exactly correct. It needs to be more correlated. So basically, there is too high of a chance for hunting to go terribly wrong for too long of a time period, and that's why sometimes people starve to death even when they shouldn't. And the solution to this is adding a more accurate flora and fauna model, which is partially why I rewrote the ecology to be more accurate. There's actually some animals moving around under the hood, but there's no map for it yet, so we haven't talked about it.
Well, I noticed here on the flora and fauna map mode there is an animal herds section, but it appears to just be a placeholder.
Yeah, so it appears to be a placeholder because there was a placeholder for them, but I removed the placeholder and now replaced it with something else. So the UI complains that the old placeholder isn't here, and it doesn't know how to show you the new placeholder.
Ah, so that's why it looks.
I did remove it, and it will have a new pie chart here instead that will show you the amount of grazers, carnivores, birds, and things like that in a tire. So there will be a third pie chart for it with annuals.
Oh, that's good. That's good. But speaking of pie charts, will there be some solution to the problem of the different sections of the chart not having individual tooltips, but instead the whole thing showing just one, like I'm showing now?
Um, I honestly may just replace pie chart with something else because the reason this happens is because pie charts use Unity's UI system in a kind of naive way, and I would like to keep the simplicity of it in the code. But if I do that, I can't implement individual tooltips. So maybe I'll just replace pie charts with some different type of graph.
Yeah, maybe just a bar graph or something like that, or a line chart.
Yeah, like grid map.
Okay, very good. Well, gosh, look at my list of things. Map modes. I believe I have shown everything. Is there something I haven't shown that you can think of?
Spoilage, but that would be difficult to show.
Okay. How do you suggest I try to show that?
I think the only sensible way is finding a settlement in Arctic areas that does a lot of hunting, and then noticing that that meat spawns much faster than grains.
Okay. Well, I can go up to this snowy area here in January by the glacier, and we can look at the huts here, and I think. Oh yeah, I'm actually not seeing any meat at all in these huts.
I think it's not the hunting season yet.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, all they have is Arctic willow, and also I noticed the population here is not. Well, no, never mind. It seems to be about the same as the other places. Yeah, they just have Arctic willow, and these guys seem to also. Oh no, there we go. These guys have some fatty meat, although not very much of it. Oh yeah, that house is empty, and that one too.
Yeah, I think you have to unpause and let the winter and let the spring come into the region.
Okay, so I'll just leave this building selected, and we'll let the seasons pass as these guys scoot around. There we go. Now they have some meat.
Oh yeah, now they run away from your view, don't they? Oh, you haven't shown settlement claims. I just remembered.
Oh, yes, you are correct. You are correct. Yes. So if we go to political settlement claims, right. So if I click on a settlement, you can see that the red area is the area that they currently are occupying, they're using, but the orange area is the area that they claim ownership of. Now, of course, these settlements near each other will have overlapping claims. And at the moment, that doesn't really matter because they're just hunter gatherers. There's plenty of space for everybody. But I assume that in the future, once there are agriculturalists and once they start really enforcing these boundaries and there are a lot more people in every tile, then these overlapping claims will create conflict.
Yeah. Right now, they mostly matter for movements. So basically, when tribes migrate, they migrate within their claimed area, and whenever a migration ends, they look at the terrain and they ask themselves, should we settle here? And if they say yes, the claim will change position to center on top of that new location.
So the whole claimed area then could theoretically move to another part of the world, and they could never return to the area where they spawned.
Yeah. If they have if they find better and better regions to live, and they think they are gonna have a better chance surviving there, then yes, they can migrate arbitrarily far, which is what should happen.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to colonize the places and new regions.
Right, right. And then of course, we'll also need to have some way for settlements to split or for new settlements to be created as the population increases.
Yes.
Is that something you want to have in 0.3?
Yeah.
Ah, very good.
It was gonna work. It was gonna work today, except it doesn't.
Oh,
So.
Okay, so I'm looking at this fatty meat here in this building. What do these numbers here mean? 246, 2460. What is that?
So the first number is the number of items, as in the discrete units in the game. Uh, so for example, for fighting it, is the number of 100 gram, 100 grams heavy chunks of meat. Whereas for artiquilos is the amount of individual flowers. So the first number is basically a discrete unit. So for bows and swords, it would be the amount of bows and swords in the stockpile. Uh, and the second number is perhaps more useful because it takes the amount of that item and multiplies it by its weight, so you can have a more visual representation of something like articulo. Because I don't think people have a metric in their heads for how much 6,000 articulo is.
Yeah.
So there's a second number to show that.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Well, the second number has kg there for kilograms, so that was fairly clear to me. It's just that the first number was confusing me. Could you potentially include a unit for the first number? I mean, it would be a different unit for every item, right?
I'm not sure what that would mean. Because like,
So
what
if
would be a unit? What would be a unit of honeysuckle flower?
well, that's exactly it, right? If I'm the player looking at the inventory of my building and I see this number, I think, what does this number mean? I have 1,100. What is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to display it because it's the same kind of it's the same kind of UX issue you have in RPG games where you can have, I don't know, 10,000 human meat for example or whatever. That's kind of similar in how it works here.
Yeah, I don't know, but well, so maybe in the entry for the item there could be a line that indicates a unit, and then the game would take
What
whatever
I'm
word.
saying is that the unit isn't possible to be specified here. Because like the unit of an item here is that item itself. Like the unit of honeysuckle flowers is the honeysuckle flower. It's
Okay,
not 1100. Mm-hmm.
so what I'm suggesting is that there could be a space in the .txt file for each item that where you would type whatever word would appear after this number. So for honeysuckle flowers, it'd be 1,100 flowers. For fatty meat, it would be 246 100-gram pieces of meat or something like that. And so
Okay. Yeah, I guess I think the better way to do it would be to what the chat suggested, to move the number out of the parentheses and have it before the item, and then include your suggestion in the item name.
yeah,
So you
that
would
would,
have, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we can have that.
yes, that does make sense. Okay. Yeah. In chat, someone just typed deer meat X 246, 24.6 kilograms. Yes, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I've been really bad about checking chat today. I am sorry, guys. I've been just busy talking to Calandil. All right, let's see here. Bri Science Guy says, "We going to see the settlements in City View?" Unfortunately, the answer is no, because although the buildings are supposed to be visible, they for some reason are not. So we can't see them right now.
Yeah, I think I reintroduced the old bug you had by accident, but I'm not sure yet. Because I recall you having issues with rendering previously too, remember?
Yes.
So I think I might have botched that again.
Fun.
If I have, it should be relatively easy to fix. So
Okay. Now, I'm noticing that these guys are moving around quite a lot, but they're not actually getting that many kinds of plants. If I look at the ecology map mode, local plants, they should be getting, let's see, what do we have here? Uh, Pears and, oh, well, no, it's because of the season. Right. Duh. Okay, never mind. I'm stupid.
yeah,
Amazing how things make sense if you think about them, you know?
I may have to change it a bit because I know that things like fruit can survive for a while if the area has a lot of snow cover, because snow kind of insulates things from rotting away.
Yeah,
So we should probably take that into account somehow to increase the odds of survival in winter areas.
yeah. Well, I think probably in colder areas, spoilage should just be generally slower for everything, right?
I mean spoilage of uncollected items, not spoilage of collected items.
Well, I mean both.
Well, yes, it already is slower for collected items. What I
Oh,
mean is that there is no concept of spoilage for things that aren't in your inventory yet, because the
ah,
game doesn't keep track of individual, I don't know, fruit on every tile.
gotcha. Okay, now I understand. I'm noticing that they still have ambrosia even 2 years into the simulation. Do you think they even?
Yeah, it doesn't melt. I mean, sorry, it doesn't spoil. uh,
Well, yeah.
so
Well,
if they don't eat it, it will stay for a while.
yeah. What I mean is, they still have ambrosia after all this time. So, do you think they even need it at all anymore? Could you just remove it?
Maybe I haven't checked, but yeah, maybe I can just remove it now.
And let's see. I want to mention something else. Oh, yeah. Over here on the left side, you can see under information, inventory weight, inventory size are both pending deletion. Um, that's clearly not supposed
Yeah,
to be that way, right?
that means exactly what it means. I need to delete it, but I haven't yet.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done it because if I change my mind and I want it back, I'd have to go through the effort of adding it, and adding things to the UI is really tiresome. So I'll only delete it when I have to. If that makes sense.
Yes, I understand. Okay. Yes, it does make sense. Also, I wish I could see.
Units, I should add them.
Yes. Well, what I was saying is the total population. Here in population, I can see 20, but I think
Uh,
it could.
go to population. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's this number here, but
Sorry.
yeah. There's a delay, so we're kind of talking over each other. Yeah. Oh well. The joy of living on different continents. But what I was suggesting is that here in the character menu, I'd like there to be a number up here telling me the total number of characters. And then maybe this could be organized as well, like one group for children, one group for gatherers. That would be make it that would make it easier to understand, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Some sort of filtering, like they have in CK2, where you can select types of characters you show. I added to the to-do list.
Yes, yeah. I mean, right now with the small number of characters, it's not a big deal. But in the future, when there are lots and lots and lots of characters in every settlement, it'll quickly become too cumbersome to use.
Yeah,
Alrighty. Well, let's see. I think we could probably find somebody that's starved to death by now, given the simulation going. No, actually, I had a different test world where a couple settlements turned purple. That they just ran out of food. But it looks like this world that's not happening. I did notice
yeah,
though. I did notice that there is this little island here that has a settlement on it. Now, I would imagine that these guys, there are 23 of them, would run out of food pretty quickly, right? Because they're on this little island. The edible food availability was just going to remain low forever, but yet they haven't starved.
there is a chance that people already starved, and that some people already starved, and they're kind of living off the base productivity of the land. If that makes sense. So like tiles, um, this map mode for edible fruit on tiles kind of shows you the stockpile, so to speak, on tiles. But when they use it up, uh, and they can't migrate anywhere, they start living off what the land produces by itself, and only off of that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does make sense. Okay, so that basically they've kind of reached the limit of what they can do, and they're just going to sit there and stay at the same population, more or
Yeah,
less.
they're gonna have a hard time growing
Okay, that makes
because there
sense.
isn't there isn't more food in the area.
Alrighty. Oh yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. This sort of speckling of the world. Although I also noticed that there are large areas where no food has been used at all, even though there are people here in these areas, which seems rather strange to me.
I need to wait for the stream delay to tell you if it's a bug or not.
Okay. I mean, I'm seeing these settlements here, but the edible food ability isn't changing.
Yeah, that either means that they died or that the area is rich enough for them to survive there. I suggest checking the map mode for primary productivity, the edible portion, before we draw any conclusions.
All right. So yeah, that's edible primary production. I mean, it seems to have quite a lot, but it just seems weird to me that the color isn't changing at all. You'd think that the edible food
Yeah,
would be going down at least a little bit.
it updates. It update the map mode updates once a month. If you manually update the map modes, you may be able to catch it slightly under the maximum value, but um, the update that updates the stored food on tiles happens before the map mode update. So if they eat some of it and then the simulation snaps it back to its maximum value because they haven't eaten enough to outweigh the primary productivity, the map mode won't change because it will be working on the full value again. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, maybe this land can just support a lot more people. I noticed the population here is 25, which is the highest I've seen. Um,
Yeah, settlements for settled foreigners could get as high as 1,000 people in very extreme areas. So
27 over here. Yeah, well, I'm mentioning it because I thought that reproduction wasn't working, but yeah, oh wow, this one is 32 people. I don't know, maybe reproduction is working.
yeah, it's hard to debug it without having the game open in Unity. I have a bunch of developer tools that show me information you can't access here, so I can't really tell.
Hmm. Well, I'm looking at the ages of the characters, and I don't see anybody who is younger than the world. So that means all of these characters existed at the beginning of the world.
Oh, that's a good way to check it.
Yeah. So I guess this settlement just spawned with a whole lot of people, and they've been able to maintain that population ever since.
I think they can spawn with up to 40 people.
Oh, okay. Now, is there
40?
any particular reason why they don't all spawn with the same number of people? Does it matter?
Sorry?
Well,
Repeat?
I just wonder why do they not all spawn with an equal number of people?
No particular reason. I just thought it'd be more interesting if they didn't.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, I guess it
Like,
makes sense.
we could spawn with the same number of people. If you let it run for like 100 years, it's gonna balance out. I don't think it matters that much.
Yeah.
I just figured it's more interesting when they don't have the same population. Because I think that way the world starts looking reasonable sooner. If that makes sense. Like if you open a world and everyone just had 30 people, that would look really artificial. It would look artificial for longer than if you started with random amounts.
Yes, I agree. That makes sense. Maybe you could also give it some weight based on the race. So a race that
You think that happens? I think that happens already. I'm not sure, but I think it does.
okay, very good. Well, I was saying that because I saw an elf settlement with 32 people, but a human settlement with 15. And I would expect the longer living races to have fewer people and the shorter living races to have more.
I think if it happens, it should happen based on calories, not on lifespan, because the long term peak population, so to speak, depends more on carrying capacity, which in turn depends more on populations, caloric needs, not necessarily the reproduction rate. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So I guess then that we'd only see the difference in reproduction rates after a while. Once the simulation had gone for a few decades or so, then we notice the difference.
Because goblins and so would have more children, so it would spread more quickly and so on.
Okay. Well, I think I've shown everything, and so the last thing I wanted to do with the stream is then have Jeng talk about what the two of you have been discussing that I'm just not aware of and can't really contribute in.
Yeah, so are you representing? I'm gonna ping him. He said be right back.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
here.
Oh, okay.
I had to use the restroom. Um, so am I like actually on the Twitch stream this way, or do I have to join?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
Unless you're not okay with that.
yeah, that's fine. Um, yeah, so I think the original discussion, as far as I'm aware, is that Kella started out with an agent-based model, which I think is Kella's preference, and it's the more modern economic approach these days anyway. Um, but unfortunately, like as far as we can tell, the agent-based model that Kella looked at doesn't like it's going to be too intense for the hardware. So I've been looking at like the older school approaches mostly in classical or like 1980s or 1970s economics to try to bring up like ways of making that calculation simpler, and that's been my big goal. And I just was trying to propose these different models to Kala and breaking them down. And I think the biggest contribution I've made is that I've been tying how the model applies to her case. Because I don't think, because Kala knows the math, but like knowing what the variables mean and stuff isn't clear in these papers I've been offering. Um, So the first model I looked at was just kind of my own creation from what was it? Just from like looking around and looking at different like microeconomics models. Um, base it boiled down to first every character has like a trade-off number basically. So like if the price of this item is so much or raises or whatever, then the amount I buy of everything else drops. Um, and then basically, the price is calculated based on like a surplus or a shortage from the last time that it did the calculation. If there's a shortage, then obviously the price rises from last time, and surplus it drops. Um, then the buyers decide to like buy their stuff based on that trade-off number, and the prices, and the producers try to control their profit by um, like dis- decreasing the amount they can produce, and then the difference between the what the producers can make and what the demanders want causes the price to change again, and it's a big loop. So that's the simple explanation I had for my model. I put it in a GitHub repo along with notes of Kala and I's conversation. I'll try to update that soon. Um, should I just give you the link, Kala? I mean, you already have it.
Yeah. I should probably post it on the server. I don't remember if I did.
Yeah, I'll just send that to you and you can do whatever you want there.
I think I have it. The time.
Yeah, but I'll make it handy for you.
Oh, thank you.
So that way it's super easy. It's right now.
That's right. I'm gonna post in the Twitch chat and on the source server.
Yeah, so that GitHub repo, like, don't be afraid if you don't code. It just has like a lot of the stuff in there is just literal like text notes, like this model does this. So if you're halfway nerdy, you can go look at it. Um, so that was the first model. Some problems with it that I saw. Uh, well, it's simple. Those are the pros, and it definitely like simplifies the calculations from the prior model. But it allows for like expansion of characters, so you can just add more characters. You can add more trade zones, et cetera, et cetera. Um, But then the cons were that the demand model itself, because every good has a number between every other good. You have an O n squared calculation problem, which means as you put more goods in, the calculation or the hardware required uh, increases literally exponentially. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
not good.
Chomsky's.
But and that demand model is pretty bad because it's also not very controllable. You can't control their behavior very well based on like intergood elasticities. So I was lately I've been trying to plug the priority queue model for demand, where like first the buyer buys this until they're satisfied. If they have more money, they'll buy the next thing, and so on until they run
So
out of money.
money. Kind of like in Victoria, right?
Yeah, just like in Victoria. That's probably, I mean, Victoria probably chose that because it's calculationally simple for the computer. It's it's easy to control like the behavior of agents. I think it's a very good model for your use case, honestly. So that's why I've been trying to plug it in.
Yeah, it seems to me like a reasonable first approximation, right? Because obviously people will try to not die into starvation first.
Hmm. The second model that we looked at was this Paul Krugman's DSGE that made him famous in the 70s, I think. And or maybe the 80s. No, I forget. But anyway, it was basically what's called the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model. And that means that things change and there's some shock, and it like the model reacts to shocks, like, oh no, the city burned down, those kinds of shocks. But at the same time, it generally like goes to some equilibrium value, so it can be stable. Um, and when we looked at it, we kind of boiled it down to two different equations. And the equations were pretty simple. I think Kella had a screenshot. Did you want me to? I mean, you made the screenshot. I'll just resend it to you.
Yeah.
I think some of the things, like, I don't entirely agree with that we simplified away, but it was like a combination of technology, the number of man hours people work, um, what was it, costs of things. Although the costs were rolled into a single number in the original paper we looked at, but we can break that out and make it for each individual good. It would be an average cost anyway. I think the model specifies that. It goes into what was it? Yeah, basically a handful of things like that. And it was also very simple, so it should simplify what Kala is doing. But and allow for more hard or for the hardware to do its thing. But obviously, like I think I don't know. So you said you wanted to think more about this, Kella. Um, when I said this, but I said like when it comes to these simpler models like the DSGE or my model, um, maybe you want to minimize that instead of maximize that economic model, because it sounds to me like your game is trying to be very agent based where each character
Yeah.
makes their own decisions. Um, and the only reason we're even looking at DSGEs, which are very top down approaches to this problem,
Yeah.
um, is because of the hardware. That's it. That's the only reason. Otherwise, you'd just have an agent based model and you'd use the original paper you looked at.
Yeah, most likely. It's like it was kind of a golden fit for such, you know? Like I think if you ask most people how they imagine agent-based economy to look like, it would be something along those lines, right?
Yeah. Where like each buyer has a willingness to pay.
Yeah,
And,
basically each buyer has like a price belief. So like
mhm.
maybe character A wants to buy wheat for 5 USD, another for 510, and then you basically match higher bidders to lowest offers. and that way you can evolve prices only from individual actions as opposed to doing it on a top-down model like in Victoria or like in Stellaris.
Right. Um. Yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm thinking is you're gonna have to like go as agent based as you dare. As much as you dare to push the hardware. And like there's going to be both that bottom up model interacting with some kind of top down model like a DSGE. And when that happens, every time like an individual makes a decision, but that decision has to be done in the top down approach, you're gonna have to like use randomized distributions to like approximate who makes that decision. You know what I mean?
I think so. I haven't thought of that. That's good work.
Like that's, I mean, we can get more specific than that, but every time there's a decision that has to happen in the top-down model because of your hardware constraints,
Yeah, yeah. The
and there has to be some kind of individual that shows that they've made the decision. Like when we talked about when the player looks at the city builder view, he's gonna
yeah,
see individual agents running around.
yeah.
Um,
I think we've talked it on the stream, but one of my main worries with top-down models is
mhm.
that when you have like a flux of workers from one occupation to another, we care about changes in occupation being specific characters, and we care about them having some sort of job stability so that they don't flip flop between some occupations as the fluxes in model between in the model change between different jobs.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
you're worried about like some poor farmer guy like suddenly becoming a fat cat
yeah,
aristocrat. Right?
yeah.
How did that happen? I don't know. So
I
I'm
think
trying to
that's
think
pretty.
of
I think that pretty much covers our discussions in a
yeah.
quite concise way. And our plan for the next weeks is to partially look at models that were used in video games because I think some of them may have ideas that can be recycled, even if at first sight they don't look like they'd be a good fit for South. So, like, I think the example I used was Stellaris and Age of Empires in when I talked to Eugen,
Hmm.
uh, which have very simple models, right? It's like you buy a good, it's spawned out of nothing, and then the price increases or decreases depending on on what you do.
Right, right.
And
And
perhaps you could,
even in models like Stronghold, like when
yeah,
you build a little trader building and you start buying stuff, the price like starts to go up exponentially based on like
yeah.
a
So
symbol, and that simulates
perhaps
an
there is,
actual supply curve.
yeah, perhaps there is a way to like hijack it and fix it, so to speak, for South, because it would be very easy to implement from a point of view of agents. Like you just replace the action of a player clicking a button with a function called the agent deciding, "Hey, I want to buy bread."
Hmm.
So it has quite an easy correspondence between what happens in the game and what should happen in the simulation, while also being extremely cheap on the hardware. So yeah, the main issue is that we'd have to find a way to make sure that goods aren't conjured out of thin air, which may be more difficult than it sounds with
Right,
this specific approach, right?
right.
So, any questions?
Yeah. I
Was
was just
that too
waiting for you.
technical for you guys? Like, did that just fly over most people's heads? Maybe you can type in chat in Twitch, and we can kind of adjust how we speak. Maybe.
If Solitan has any questions, because he has something, I think.
Yes. Well, I
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to wait for you guys to finish, talking. I didn't want to interject there. I can say that at least for me, most of that was pretty easy to understand, and I haven't studied economics at all. So I mean, I can't speak for other people, but I think it wasn't too bad. I took some, I don't know, notes, I guess, or I typed some thoughts while you guys were talking. Um, when you were talking about the model kind of prioritizing things based on people's needs, it reminded me of Maslow's hierarchy, where the you could have the goods at the bottom be more strongly desired, and so they might have uh, greater production. People would seek them more, and so maybe the prices for those would be lower because there'd just be more of them around. I'm just thinking out loud. If that helps you at all.
Yeah. One of the reasons why this priority queue model is desirable, this pyramid of needs model is desirable, is that it's very easy to hijack it to add influences from culture. Like if we want to make people care more about religion and less about class or something, I don't know. It's very easy to just move one trade good up or down the list to reflect that change. So in a certain way, it's kind of natural natural and easy first order approximation
I
for
mean,
what we're doing.
oh yeah, yeah. And
It's
I
like
mean,
other, yeah, like we don't need to ask ourselves as much what is the correct way to change the supply curve or the demand curve for a trade good when I don't know cultural religiosity changes by 10%, because that would be probably difficult to answer correctly.
Okay, yeah. Um, I also so you mentioned that you don't want goods to come out of thin air or to come from nothing. I think maybe then you could have goods always require some kind of expenditure. Like for example, if an agent wants to go hunting and he is successful, he has expended some energy in so doing. And so he needs to then get more energy from the food he has hunted than he expended in getting the food, for example.
When I said out of nothing, I meant in the context of trade. You know how in Stellaris there is this market what they have for the galactic market.
Yeah.
Even if there is just one empire and nobody is selling, you can still buy from it as
Oh,
at infinity. I mean that kind of creation, like from the trade from the action of trade itself.
yes. Okay, I understand. Yeah. Or like in Europa Universalis, you can take a loan, but who are you taking the loan from?
Yeah,
Nobody.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Unlike in Age of Empires, where you buy wood and it just spawns in your inventory.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. 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 Well, I don't think that'd be a problem though, because I don't think you'd do it that way anyway, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying we can't do that and have the game wrong. So we can't use their models naively. We have to somehow coerce them to be reasonable.
I've got an idea. See, okay, what you do is you have mana, right? You can have wood mana and gold mana, right? Great idea.
You're ingenious. It
Yes.
doesn't come from nothing. It comes from mana.
so my understanding of Stellaris, and maybe we'll get into this more next time, but it's kind of so there's like in economics, there's four factors of production, like labor, capital, and what technology is usually sometimes one land. And it seems like a lot of the what you acquire, like when you get a planet that has certain resources, is it's kind of like capital, where it just like once you own that unit of capital, it just spits out like units of stuff. Is that right?
Yes, yes. The main bit I care about in Stellaris is the market, I guess, and how it changes prices. Because basically, the way it works is that the market has a price for a trade good. When someone buys from that trade good, when someone buys that trade good, the price goes up. It moves along some exponential curve. So, like, if you buy 100 units, you move 100 units on the exponential curve to the right. Uh, and when someone sells, you do the same, but in the opposite direction. And when nothing happens, you very slowly decay the price back to the equilibrium, so to speak. And I was thinking maybe that would be a reasonable, that would be a reasonable way to trade prices, to like have some kind of abstract quote unquote market that has a inventory of items on sale, and it buys them and sells them based on people's actions.
Yeah, like people put in. That's kind of like what I was doing with my model. People put in like a bid for I want this, and then if the quantity like demanded is, you know, that controls the price.
Yeah,
Quantity demanded and quantity supplied controls the price.
yeah, exactly.
Well, that sounds good to me, but of course, we'd have to see the implementation, and maybe as soon as it's put in the game, it'll explode for some reason. Which then sort of segues into what I wanted to ask, which is, will these discussions have much meaning for the hunter gatherers of 0.3?
Uh, maybe, probably not. I mean, I did mention that I'd like to delay the update by a month, so there is a chance that they will, but I wouldn't count on it. I think for the hunter gatherers, I'll just use static prices, or maybe prices with random fluctuations from markup chains. So something very, very simple, because there won't be really that much economic activity, so I don't think it's that big of a loss. But it's also a big time save that gives us more time to figure out the theoretical problems with the models that we can implement.
Well, I
And there's
think
also take into account.
um, I ask because I can think of one way you could implement economic activity right now almost, and that would be starving people would try to trade for food from people who have excess food.
Yeah, that will happen. Yeah, that should happen, but it's not happening for some reason.
Oh! It's supposed to be happening in this version right now.
Yeah, I think I botched something when I was working on climate of all things.
Ah, okay. Well, then I guess that then I have to ask about that. So, what determines the range at which they can trade, or the speed at which that happens? How are
Oh,
resources transferred?
they only trade within this. They are only supposed to trade within their settlement. There is no long range trade. I think that's what you meant.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Settlements trading with each other.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, then no, there is no long range trade right now.
Ah, well, I mean, I guess if you wanted to test your models, that would be one pretty clear way to make sure people are exchanging things, because if they don't get it, they die.
Yeah, actually, we care a bit more about what happens within the settlement right now because we need to get the microeconomics of a single town before we get the macroeconomics of a whole nation working. If that makes sense.
For
Yeah.
agent-based model, that's how it works. Yeah.
It's mostly because, as James said, our model is agent based, so we can't have the large without the small. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I, I, I understand. I was just thinking that so on the small scale, if there's not enough food for everybody to go around, then they would switch to large scale. They think, okay, we don't have food here, but those guys over there have food. We can trade with them.
Yeah, there's only one problem with that. If you go through the effort of walking to some town far away, why not just walk to a place with food instead?
Well, okay, yeah, that's good point. Yes.
In historical societies, when population pressure was high, it actually needed people with food coming to people without food to gift them to make them indebted to themselves. So, ironically enough, in economics we're trying to simulate, the dynamic is actually supposed to be reversed.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but that makes sense now that you mention it. Yeah, that I can imagine people doing that. And then, oh, do you? do you want to include these discussions of economics in the dev diary you said you were going to write?
I may do that. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think people might find it interesting, and not everybody will listen to the stream or watch the video.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I should. It's a bit tricky because I don't want to go into too much technical detail in the dev diaries, and half of the time we spent with Jank on this was in the equations, so that could be pretty boring for most people,
Oh,
I imagine.
well then, if you do describe it, you just have to describe it in some way where equations are not
Yeah, yeah,
involved.
yeah. That's true.
Alrighty.
So, anything else?
I don't know. Well, I've left the simulation running this whole time. It's now at 10 years, so I guess
I guess you could check if people are still alive.
yeah, exactly. That's what I
Oh,
was going to do.
people die from old age too. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah. We wouldn't really encounter that though because 10 years isn't really long enough for that to happen. We'd have to let simulation run for 100 years or something, and then
Well, some people spawn pretty old.
well, that is true. Okay. Well, I have found a purple settlement, so we have seven
It's probably
characters.
still listed.
Oh yeah, so there's no one left in this settlement. It has 0 characters, but the population reads that it has 7. So that's strange.
Does it? Okay, I'll have to fix that too.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Oh, there's another purple settlement. We have again 7 people, but no characters.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Hmm. Yeah,
Good
and
catch.
then yep. What?
Hmm.
Well, anyway, I noticed that under the purple settlement we have plenty of food availability, yet they still starved.
Well, the food is available now because they starved, presumably.
Well, okay, yes, fair enough. That makes sense. And then I can see that they these guys just kind of scooted back and forth across this strip of land from the coast to this lake over here to get food.
Maybe. I have a stream delay, so I can't really tell right now.
Hmm. Oh well,
Like, there's half a minute of delay on the stream for me, so
half a minute. Oh, that's I didn't know it was that long.
at least it feels like it. Because I hear you in real time, but I see the results feel actually in delay, so that's what I'm inferring from. Anyhow,
Okay. Well, anyway, I think that's probably everything. I don't know if there's anything else to show. We've done all the things I wanted to do.
yeah, I think it's a good moment to wrap it up.
Alrighty then. Well, thanks to Jang and Calandio for coming on the stream. It was fun, and of course, big thanks to Calandio for making the game.
Well, thank you for showing it.
Yes, yes. And I guess if you won't release 0.3 at the end of December, we could have another stream at the end of December then, a Christmas stream.
Yes, yes. That would be quite nice.
Okie doke. Well then, I guess we will see all of you guys in the chat in about a month around Christmas time. And yeah, so goodbye everyone.
Bye.